Welcome back to Crown's Crypto Cave. A very late start over here on this Thursday morning from a overcast and thunderstormy-ish type Helsinki, Finland. It's been pounding thunderstorms ever since 1 a.m. here, like incredibly loud. I've never heard anything that loud in my life. It sounded like Russia was flying some planes above and we're getting ready for nuclear war in World War III or some shit like that. Anyways, enough about that. More about this over here as Bitcoin still has not resolved any of the short, medium, or even, of course, higher term timeframes as well. Ranges as far as that goes, but we do have a few things to update in the short term, of course, and because Thursday is actually historically Bitcoin's highest volatility day of the week, if you're just looking at week by week action, it is one of those times where I do think that it's really important to be paying attention because we're very close to resolving those short-term time frame ranges, and that likely does have the domino effect of leading on into the high-term time frame ranges as well. Of course, at the end of the day, I trust price action levels more than anything else, and that really needs to be the focus of anything of my trading. But of course, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And with that said, what else do I want to say? For anyone who's interested in gaming, I do have a gaming channel now, and I could use more friends over there. If you're interested in strategy games, especially Total War, check it out at Total Crown here on YouTube. I'll have a link in the comment section below. Don't feel obligated to support it if you don't want to, but for anyone who's looking to hang on out a little bit later today, and probably for every day going on, as that's kind of my new endeavor right now, as Bitcoin's been more or less boring, so need to busy myself somehow. Anyways, feel free to hang out over there. Anyways, looking at the Crown Trading application, which can be found at app.crowntrading.net, and has another passing update coming tomorrow, I believe it is, or at least after Friday. We do see that open interest is once again on the precipice of the top side of the range that we're looking for to correlate with the break of the high-term time frame range on price action. So I do believe that we are seeing the dominoes set up right now as the open interest quite literally, it's technically even above it right now. As I've been saying, it's the range on the open interest between about 1.5 billion and 1.7.5 billion, of which we are a little bit above 1.7.5 billion right now, which would suggest that the next move likely does get it. Extremely likely for the short and medium term timeframes, which at this price point, we're only talking about like a $340 move. But realistically, because everything's wound up so tightly, it would be reasonable to think that we very likely could have resolution on the higher term timeframes, and then we're talking about multi-thousands dollars worth of price action. Anyways, all the other top end metrics are pretty steady here. Bitcoin dominance coming down to about a 65 read, coming from about 65.5% over this past weekend. And what else do we see? Everything else more or less steady. Fear and greed index is still oscillating in the slightly fearful zone, which is still the one thing that does make me kind of err on this, among other things, make me err on the side of overall bullishness. At least I really don't want to get bearish until Bitcoin at the very least breaks the high term time frame range. Then that's again separating the high term time frame analysis from the low term time frame analysis. But the error still is, well, actually no, it's not still anymore because it has risen up to about 9,000. So I would still be looking at that as the actionable point, at least for myself, to kind of change around those biases. For right now, let's get into the actual price action charts. And as you can see right here, Bitcoin does seem to be putting in, if you're bearish, you're looking at this as a lower high right here in the making. If you're bullish, you're looking at this as a higher low in the making. Both are equally as valid with Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is right now, just because realistically, we don't have anything that's too obvious right here on the daily for what it's worth. What is kind of being hinted on price action is that still the medium term, the short and medium term time frame pivots are actually one and the same right now, right around this 9,500-ish level, of which if we can close, let me get exactly where it is. I have it right around about 9520-ish region. Yeah. So as long as Bitcoin's below that area, I would look at that. I would look at this as an incredibly tight range between about 93, the 200 exponential moving average, and in that area that we just stated, about 95.20. So that's quite literally about a $200 range. This is not tradable for myself, and again, to each their own. But for myself, I'd rather just wait here with any sort of a 2-hour or 4-hour total closure, especially above 95.20. I would look for the extension to the top side of this range at about 98 to 9900 region. somewhere around this blue box territory right here, then again, we're once in the fuckboy range. As long as Bitcoin's below this blue box right here, I can't get too excited about, massive upside moves. Just like for the downside, I can't get too excited for a massive girthy red dildo in my face until Bitcoin breaks back down below, like we said, about 9,000, especially below 8,700, as that would create finally a lower low right there. Or actually, you could use this price point right here as well on the 4 hour, although I wouldn't trust it as much. I'd really like to see it be done on a 12-hour or a daily, but for purposes of thoroughness, that would be 9,100 actually. So that would kind of be obviously creating another lower low right here, but does it really break this area right here? No, it doesn't necessarily imply that until we get on to actually, not even tomorrow's price action, but Saturday's price action is when the trend line would start to meet that area for what it's worth right now. But like I said, I'm not interested in those. I'm not interested in the very short-term range right here, even though it probably does offer up a nice little edge. But above 95.20 on a 2-hour or 4-hour dildo closure, yes, I would look for a move to 98 or 9900 region. By the same token, another 4-hour dildo closure below, especially 93.50ish region, the 200 exponential moving average right here would be considered weakness, and I would be looking for a move back down to the 377 exponential moving average right here. And what do you know, the 377 just so happens to be straight in line with our long-term, or sorry, I shouldn't say our long-term, but the support trend line for this consolidation, which is still making the bias of it as an ascending triangle. Ascending triangle obviously does imply bullish reaccumulation, so it would naturally make me err on the side of the BULAs here as long as this area is holding. But as far as the short-term timeframes go, now again, deliberately differentiated between the two. If Bitcoin does break back down below 93.50, while it doesn't necessarily constitute a break of the greater formation, it would imply a test back down here towards that $9,000 region and rising over time. Like we said, sometime around Saturday, it will be around 9,100ish region, which will essentially be in line with that last prior low that we set in on the 15th, 3 days ago. So keep all those areas in mind because they still do very much matter. It's just the ranges are so tight here that, unless you're like really at your computer all day long and really on top of it, it's going to be very tight margins to kind of be making that. Also to the upside, I do believe that just using yesterday's high at 95.76 would also be just as good. Actually, in fact, I'm going to be putting an alert there right now. But of course, that makes the edge on that trade a little bit smaller, right? Because if you're waiting for that, then you really only have about 200, maybe $300 to the tops of the range. Hey, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Alert limit reach. I have the. I literally pay for like the highest duty trading view. I think it's like $500 a year. Like what? There's limitations. I thought that's the point of paying that. Oh well, whatever, man. Figure it out later. But yes, the high of yesterday, which on BitMexico would be 95.76. I do believe would likely get at that as well if I want to be a little more conservative on that. Although I don't really think it's warranted. 95.98 would be the same sort of actionable area, initiating the next move up to the top side of the range. At the very least, 9,800. Personally speaking, I do think that we would tap into the top side liquidity zone of this blue box territory at about 9,900 to 10,000. Any sort of a 4-hour dildo closure above 9,900, especially a 12-hour or a daily above that region. And yes, I would be looking for the upside measure move to be completed from this ascending triangle, which actually is pointing north towards about 11,100, in fact, which is very interesting because it also would naturally imply a higher high above this February high that we saw in 2020, which then would realistically, while the measure move very likely would get hit, especially if this area was taken out to the upside, 10,550, I realistically would only be looking for a short-term, maybe medium-term pullback from that $11,100 target before further continuation to the next macro area, of which that's where I actually really start to get excited potentially for a long-term play. As you already know where I'm fucking going with this. The 11,500 area, the same area that Bitcoin's been getting rejected at and getting distributed on ever since January 2018 right here, going all the way back about almost 3 years ago. With a major meltdown coming in from this rejection right around 11.5, going all the way down to 6,000 after that. Almost 50% move. Same thing a month later in February on this double top right here. Then again about a year later in July, and a month later after that, a month and a half later in August. And so if we could actually see a weekly dildo close above that region, even if it's just by a little bit, that would be a macro change of behavior. It would say that no longer are the bigger players distributing in this region. And at that point, realistically, I just get generally bullish for big bad moves, see upside. 14,000 would kind of be a short-term target, or sorry, medium-term target after that. Then long-term 16,000 and 20,000 areas of interest. But naturally, I'd just be relatively just bullish over there. And obviously, from a volume profile perspective as well, you can see that this area is a complete change of behavior from the macro perspective above 11.5, even above 10.5 right here on that last February high that we saw this year. Very likely, very likely would lead up into a test on that. And if we want to take it one step further, we can go over here to CMEs, and that is still one of the gaps present coming in back from August 2019 as well. So all of these things naturally line up with each other pretty damn well. I'm sure that there's a major fib in there too, but you don't need to do everything in order to see the confluence. Although I'm sure that there is. In fact, we could probably figure it out right now. Why not just fucking do it for the purpose of thoroughness? I'm just curious if we took one. Hey, where you at? Where's my fib tool? There you are, sir. Elsa started calling me sir, and now I'm saying it all the time too. There it is. Okay, I guess I already have it in. 0.5 fib actually is right around 11.5 as well, and 11.5 would be the retrace, or sorry, the 0.5 would be the retracement from the $20,000 high to the $3,100 low. So I really do like that area overall. A lot of things lining up with each other, but that also means that I can't really get macro bullish until Bitcoin gets back above there, or if it ever does get back above there. By the same token, if Bitcoin does take out the downside long-term region here, which for the more aggressive people, they're probably only going to wait for like a 4-hour total closure below, let's call it 9,000 now, as it is rising rather rapidly. And you could do it that way. You could also just wait for a wick below that last low. So no longer would I wait for 8,700 over here to get broken. It's now this low actually, and that would offer up a little bit more of an edge. That also would imply that either a wick below that current wick low at 8,900 about, or a 4-hour closing low very likely gets it as well. Although technically speaking, 12-hour and daily are going to make a lot more of a confident trade for myself to the downside. If Bitcoin does break that area, the same sort of logic does apply. I'd still be targeting the 0.5 here all the way down towards 7,500-ish region. It would also be kind of the measured move from this formation as well. Not as dependable when it does break counter trend, but I do typically see it get hit in most major markets. As far as bounces along the way, I'd be looking at one around the 382. Also got this area right here pretty damn well. I believe it's also somewhere around where the daily 200 simple is. Yes, indeed it is. And also a historical breakout and breakdown area too. So likely going to get respected for a bounce, but I don't think that Bitcoin bottoms there. If Bitcoin breaks to the downside here, at the very least, I'd be looking for 7,500 from 9,000 low, or sorry, from 9,000 break, and if that area fails, I'd be looking for 618 to be tapped down around here to around 6,900-ish region. Same sort of thing on this area as well. Historically, very, 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 very interesting, as we do see accumulation and also big breakouts spun about it. So that is what I'd be looking at, and I do think that actually is probably in the making, probably in the cards sooner rather than later. The reason why I say that is because historical volatility percentile is at such an outlier of a read right now. We have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, working on 8 days of single digit or even 0 historical volatility percentile. To put that in perspective, that would say that if it's like a 1 read, that means that 99 that means that 99 other if we were to take the last 100 days, 99 of the other days had more volatility in comparison to what we're looking at, which I think you probably get that one yourself just by looking at these fucking charts. It's been absolutely mind-numbingly boring. This is like watching paint dry, and even that sounds more appealing right now. To put this in perspective, last time that we saw this low volatility on the daily was back in middle of September 2019. That was before this major dump right here from 10.3 all the way down to realistically 6,000, maybe even you say 4,000 right here. I think that's a little bit lofty. The time before that was this major breakout to the upside right here from about 4,000 to 14,000 a few months later, but relatively quickly, about 2x, 3x from 4,000 all the way to, well, this was what, 8,000, 9,000. Yeah. Time before that was on this area right here on the late October 2018 breakdown from 6,000 to 3,000. Again, we're talking about to the downside, an average of 50% moves. To the upside, we're talking about Well, we only went over one iteration there. In fact, there's actually not too many iterations of this being done to the upside, but there's one right here. This one going all the way from about $450 before the next. I mean, this is like the next couple of years of just straight up action of $20,000. My point is that we're very likely to be looking at, not just like a big move, but like a macro move here. This is typically the signatures that we do put in on Bitcoin price action before making one of those big moves. Now, going over to the daily Stokes, we do see that they actually are pointed up, and they are bouncing off the same trend line that we've had in since April 2020 this year. Now, I don't trust formations on something like this, but I do find that trend lines actually are quite or offer up a good enough edge, and we will stay to the upside, or momentum stays the upside, rather, better said, as long as Bitcoin's above 9240-ish region. Why is that interesting? Well, it's actually very interesting here because that would imply that as long as Bitcoin's above yesterday's low, the path of least resistance is to the upside. However, that would also imply that if Bitcoin does take out yesterday's low at 92.27, not only will we be now looking like this is another lower high, getting ready for some more lower lows, aka creating a downtrend right here, but also momentum on the daily would be turning down as well. So that would further confirm that. So I really like the confluence there. And I go as far as saying that if Bitcoin does break back down below and even just trades below yesterday's low at 92.20, I do think that not only is Bitcoin going to be testing 9,200, probably, or sorry, not 9,200, but 9,000 even, that rising trend line that we've been running for the last couple months. Probably does bounce there a little bit again, but overall, I'd be looking for that to ultimately break down. I do not think that testing back down to 9,000 is going to be anything resembling strength. Like I said, probably does bounce on the lower term timeframes, but that bounce very likely to get sold into, and then this is your next lower high right here at 9,500. So that just offers up a nice little range between 9,000 and maybe 9350-ish region, of which at that point I'd really start to actually angle my own trading towards making some maybe long-term. Maybe even making some long-term bear spreads, as right now is one of the few times, I feel like I've said this a few times this year already, which is typically like more than enough as it is. But to be fair, this is again one of those times where I'm actually interested in buying premium and being net long Vega right now, as this is an outlier, man. This is an outlier, and very likely we're going to see a test up to this trend line on the next spike up with price action. That also does suggest, so that long term we're still caught within the we're still caught within the confines of a greater macro contraction phase here, which is likely to get resolved somewhere around its 75% full marker, at least if we're going off statistics, which would imply like August, September, maybe even October, on a little bit of a later read right there. And when we're talking about the macro range, once again, the macro range in this current posturing would be 11,500 to the upside and about 6,900 to the downside. That means that I expect a break outside of that range, probably around that time, to be fair. I don't have a bias on direction, although if I am looking at daily trend, it's bullish. If I'm looking at the formations going on right now, as it is, as long as it holds that trend line, it technically is still a bullish reaccumulation formation in an ascending triangle, which Bitcoin actually quite likes. Major moving averages here are bullish as well, as we do see a nice golden cross on the daily and on all time frames, essentially up to like I guess on all time frames now that matters as far as the higher term time frames go. 2 days still running the 21 exponential moving average. We spoke about this one getting tested yesterday. We got that test, nice little backfill right there. So for all the people in the TA program, definitely reference that newer video, because it's been offering up a lot of edges, especially when things get really tight like this. There's not too much to be doing, to be honest with you, at least for myself. I'm speaking personally here, so maybe this applies to you, maybe it doesn't apply to you, but hey, those quick scalps for $100, they add up over time, especially when they give them to you a few times a day. So in that case right there, again, reference that concept, because as long as we are above that 21 exponential moving average on the 2 day, and as long as all these major moving averages essentially have positive slopes, it does still put the odds in the favor of the Boo laws here. We'll look at the actual probabilities a little bit later, but again, at the end of the day, still need to see the critical levels broken, of which we've been looking at the same thing for the last 2 months, and they have not been broken. Obviously, looking at the 2 day momentum oscillators, we do see 2 day Stokes nosediving here. What would be needed to turn them back up to the upside? Needs to close above 98.25, and I believe that we do close this one today. Yes, we do close it today at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so keep that in mind. Now, of course, 98.20, 98.50, relatively far away from current price action, but think about where that put price action right now, Bitcoin actually could close above there. That'd set it up for a test of the top side of the resistance right around 9,900-ish region. And at that point, you know, you have to be thinking not you have to be thinking, but I would be thinking, or at least I would be considering that, you know, if momentum also is going to turn back around this point, this would also be considered a rejection of getting out of the bullish control zone, plus momentum also is turning back up at topside resistance in a bullish formation, as all major moving averages have positive slopes. That would be a pretty damn good setup, in my opinion, for a potential breakout to the upside, especially as historical volatility percentile on the 2-day is just as low as the daily. In fact, back into single digits, quite literally at a 1 read for the last couple dildos. Last time that we were this low was actually not so long ago, in February 2020. That was before this big breakdown from 10,000 to 4,000. Don't think it's always going to be that impressive of a move, to be fair. But you know, a few more iterations right here. We do have another one of extremely low volatility. Again, the same one in November of 2018. So a 50% breakdown. We all know about that one. This one right here on this 8,500 tick before moving down to 6,000 base. And before that, I think we'd have to go back. Yeah, we'd have to go back to that $800 region right here before, you know, massive moves to the upside. So, you know, it is suggesting that we are going to be seeing that move, I think, incredibly soon. I think that can really happen at any moment in time now. So I'm actually going to be spending quite a bit of time at my computer, even though it's been not so rewarded with moves and actions recently. But I really don't want to be selling premium right now. You know, I love selling premium in this area right here and pulling in the straddles and strangles, and just letting time decay work for you. But right now, it's just I don't think that that's the time to be doing it. I'm on the other side of the trade. I'm actually long volatility right now. Looking at 2-day RSI, we do have hidden bullish divergence potentially in play. I'm going to rename that to. I'm renaming it right now. No, it's I just think it's better accurately called continuation divergence. It's like what's fucking hidden about it? You know, am I like Sherlock Holmes figuring this shit out? No, like Jesus Christ, man, anyone can figure that out with like 2 days worth of training. You know, how to find hidden divergence. Just makes sense. Really cool. No, it's continuation divergence, and for now, as long as this operates as a higher low, then yes, that is likely to play out. And to be fair, on a on a continuation divergence play, I'd be looking for a move to the top side of the range. So if Bitcoin can confirm this as a local low, which it will if it takes out the last 2-day high, especially at 9,600, or closes that 4-hour dildo above 95.25, I believe is what we said earlier, then yes, I would look for that to play out to the tops of the range. 9,800, 9,900 would be my area, and that would set it up for a very good close later tonight. So keep that in mind as well. You know, it's going to have to be quick on the trigger finger for today's action, because if it does move to the upside, it probably happens relatively fast. If it moves to the downside, I'd probably be looking for another lackluster day. Like I've been saying, hesitation within this region is not going to be interpreted as good or Bula-ish. Looking at the 3-day right here, we are seeing momentum oscillators nosedive, and will continue to nosedive as long as we are below 10,000. 3-day RSI does not have the same hidden bullish divergence, to be fair, or sorry, continuation divergence, already breaking my own law. And let's see, what about the weekly as well? So with the weekly is very interesting here as well. So of course, tomorrow's gonna be Friday, so we're gonna see CMEs close for the week's action. And I would say that if CNS CMEs do seem to lead spot more often than not, and for the people who say that it doesn't, well, you probably don't pay for the updated feed. But typically I find that the Friday close for CME does greatly influence wherever spot's going to close on Sunday. And in this case right here, you know, if we do close below 9,500, essentially, weekly Stochs will turn down. And remember, they are in kind of a scary posture right here. This usually is not going to be interpreted all that well historically for Bitcoin. This does typically call a lot of major highs going all the way back to May 2016. I mean, let's just see how good it is, even in a bull market right here, going back to 2016, that is. So, you know, that called this high right here, going from 800 down to 450. That's a 50% move. That sounds kind of familiar from those volatility reads. I'm going to put this on log scale so we can see it a little bit better. Another one right here, getting the move down from 1,200 to 700. Pretty fucking good move there as well. Doesn't look all that nasty on this, but yeah, that is, you know, 40% move, right? Looking at this area right here, calls the move from 3,000 down to 1,600. Another 50% move now, isn't that? Another move right here from 4,950 down to 3,000. Not necessarily a 50% move, but like 30%, I think. Still relatively high. And then the $20,000 high, actually not so long after that. So, and then more recently, actually, did call this one down right here, although snaked around quite a bit at the $14,000 level. Now, here's the thing. In strong trending markets, you actually do expect your Stokes to kind of stay up in this region for a while. That's at least what you see in traditional markets and Forex for what it's worth. Bitcoin, we haven't seen that just yet because it is a relatively newer asset, 10 years of trading history compared to like a fiat currency, right? But for what it's worth, we don't have that just yet. So to be fair, it would be a little bit scary, especially if we do start to turn down from this region and confirm across the downside. I'd still be going off of levels, but it would start to really naturally boost the probabilities in favor of the downside here. But for now, still pointed up, still pointed north, and very much very much erect for what it's worth right now. Looking at CME RSI, it looks like it is still trying to consolidate above the levels that we've been having in here for a while. I'm still skeptical about this read, but technically speaking, not supposed to get too bearish as long as it's above the exponential. Which is currently coming in around a 54 read, which we could actually see what would price actually need to close below in order to confirm a break on that. It'd have to close below 92.50. That area sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's a 92.50ish region to the downside. That likely does be indicative of continuation. Probably bounces at 9,000 again, but overall, I wouldn't trust that more than like a $400, maybe $500 bounce at most. As long as it's below 9,500 at that point, it is a downtrend, and or it's a downtrend forming at least, and it does not look healthy. I'll put it that way. Let's go look at Bitcoin versus yen. I'm curious if there's anything obvious here. Bitcoin versus yen actually a little bit more healthy as far as weekly oscillators go. It is still above the upside momentum on the weekly. That is, daily is more or less the same as spot price action. However, we are seeing the 10 symbol cross the downside of the 21. Not a death sentence in and of its own self, but if Bitcoin really starts to confirm some more daily closes, especially below the 21 at 102,000 yen, that's going to be problematic and probably set up for a move at the very least down to the 200 simple, 200 exponential average right here. So again, I can very easily go either way with this one, man. I know that's what people hate about technical analysis, but that's all that it is. It's all about just coming up with, potential scenarios and then ways to kind of tick them off and tick them on, meaning, documentable points, which I refer to as like pivot points sometimes, or actionable points, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. Just those areas that actually change around price action or let you know that idea is not going to work, and that's going to be mediated by some sort of technical indicator or technical style, which gives you some sort of a statistical edge. That's all that it is. So it doesn't mean that it's always going to work out, but I know that can really piss some people off. Looking at euro dollar, still need to see the weekly close, but it's not the weekly close, the monthly close is what I really be looking for right here, above 112, and I'd probably be looking for some more upside into the coming months. But man, it's going to be cutting it close, and Jesus, man, it's kind of hard to get out of a 12-year downtrend. So there's that. Also, sorry, I forgot to mention this as well. As for kind of rounding out the Bula-ish case for Bitcoin, is Nasdaq still hanging it high, bouncing off the 10 simple right here, working its way back up to the upside as we spoke about after putting that major low right around here, around our 9,900-ish target, or sorry, no, it was way down here. No, not 9350-ish target. I'm talking about the more recent price action right here, but still holding the uptrend. Still want to see a close above about 10,033, but if you can do that, I'd look for a retest of the highs and probably beyond. I do think that overall the weekly is incredibly strong. I'd say any sort of a weekly close above 98.50 tomorrow, and I'd be looking for continuation overall to new all-time highs later this month or July, whatever it ends up being. It would look very, very good. And what do you know, very similar reads here that we see on Bitcoin. These markets seem to be pretty damn correlated. If you want a more deep dive into the correlation of these two assets, or at least an explanation of it, definitely go check out yesterday's video, as that's what I spent like the first 10 to 15 minutes speaking on. Weekly RSI is actually looking pretty good here as well. So I am actually still bullish on NASDAQ futures, or just NASDAQ and the markets in general. We could also use today's daily total low at 98.66.5 as a nice pivot point as well. If that gets taken out to the downside, I would look for another move back down here to 9700-ish region. But overall, I'm not really thinking that that's going to happen, to be honest with you. Momentum will cross back up to the upside as long as we're essentially above that area, about 98.50ish region. So keep that area in mind as overall this still looks pretty damn good to me. Looking at E-mini futures, more or less the same, but less impressive. Did just get the golden cross on the daily a few days ago, and I do consider this kind of the test down. And if it can close back above the 10 simple, I'd look for a retest of the 323 323 to 325 high right here, and probably continuation overall. I believe that this is the pullback that I was talking about, looking for as we got into the month of June. That was going to be a big fake out and before the continuation of the upside. I believe that that's what we're looking at right here. It's especially apparent on NAS futures, so I'd keep an eye on that, and that's likely going to drive the bias for Bitcoin as well. So as long as this one's keep hanging it high, I do still lean to the upside on Bitcoin. But again, levels matter more than anything else. I didn't even check out the low term time frame momentum oscillators on Bitcoin. Let's actually do that right now. How long is this video already? 30 minutes. What the fuck, Crown? Wasting my time with a bunch of bullshit. Sorry, I do apologize. It's also my time too. Anyways, looking at the 4 hour right here, looks like we do have a nice trend line forming in this region right here, which would be protecting against the edge of the bearish control zone. Let's see what would be needed to keep that momentum to the upside. Need to close 4 hour dildos above about 9,500, a few ticks below there, but technically 9,500. And you can, I'm sure that people are calling this some sort of an inverted head and shoulders. It's technically not an inverted head and shoulders, but we do have, we did have a nice 3 drives on RSI. It's not divergence on the 3rd drive, but actually usually that is a reversal formation, to be fair. Kind of have a similar one that we saw in, what was it? When was this? This was like late 2019. Yeah, back around here. We put in a low at 6,700, trade back down, make another lower low, put in some major divergence there, and then come down and put in kind of like this one was a little bit more of a inverted head and shoulders, very sloppy one, but fair enough. Does kind of operate a little bit better as one, and then put in this higher low right here. It's that's what the BULAs are very likely looking at right here. So that also means that it's very problematic if Bitcoin comes back down below 9,300, especially, or even 9,250, even more so. Looking at RSI, are we seeing anything obvious here? I'm not really seeing anything too obvious. I'm sure someone's going to be drawing a channel on this. Yeah, good work. But at the end of the day, man, levels here are just much more, just a lot easier to deal with. 3 hour Stokes pointed nice and erect to the upside as we do see it test the 55 and 200. So it's actually kind of a critical area, because the longer that it stays below the 200 on a closing basis, it will naturally get the death cross. Not necessarily the biggest deal in a 3 hour, but the 4 hour starts to matter quite a bit. And this one will actually see the fuck me, man, can't speak. I've been putting a computer together all day long so far, as Elsa's old computer just absolutely fucking shit the bed. Fuck AMD, go fuck yourself. Just kidding. Ha. Anyways, well, no one cares about AMD Live, so yeah, you can say fuck them. So yeah, 3 hour momentum will remain to the upside as long as we're closing 3 hour deltas above 9,300. So it really does add efficacy to that 9,250 to 9,300-ish area for remaining slightly aimed towards the upside in the short term. 2 hours showing momentum will turn to the downside naturally with any sort of a closure below 94.40, and hourly showing 9,400 to the downside as well. Let's go check out the 12 hour. The 12 hour actually freshly crossed the upside recently as well. And what do you know? We do see that the momentum on the 12 hour will naturally turn around back again to the downside if we take out essentially yesterday's low at about 9,200. It's officially 97.3, but over kind of the same area. For now, though, has plenty of room here, and also rejecting the bearish control zone. So technically speaking, should be, or sorry, I shouldn't say should. I don't like that word when it comes to trading, but I'd be a little bit more geared towards the upside. But if this happens right here, not only will we be creating another lower high, but also very likely creating another lower low on the 12 hour, and then turn the 12 hour momentum to the downside. I mean, that's going to be a very good setup for breaking this to the downside overall, if that does happen. So we're kind of at crunch time right now. The ranges keep on getting smaller and smaller, which makes the next breakout a lot more interesting. And now it's almost like the last 12 hour dildo that we could probably use almost exclusively. If you want to be a little bit more conservative, I'd use 9,600 as a short-term trigger to the upside. Both of those probably equally gets it. I mean, they're only $20 away from each other on the upside, to be fair, and to the downside is the same level anyways. 92.27 on Mexico, that is. Anyways, what else you want to look at? Let's go look at probabilities. How about that? Let's see. So we'll keep the upside target the same range because that would resolve the short-term range, which would very likely resolve the high-term time frame continuation divergence, which would likely put Bitcoin back around 98, 9900 region and put it in a damn good posture to actually break out the top side, initiate that move towards 11,000. By the same token, to the downside, we now have a very, 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 very good range right here. Let's just call it 92.25, and that would very likely insinuate another test to the downside of the range at 9,000. But realistically, at that point, with everything else turning down, I'd very likely be looking for everything to kind of fall through with it. So let's see what this prints. So the upside is showing about 30, a little bit under 37% to the upside, and to the downside, 30.3% essentially as well. So these are both incredibly highly likely right now, and that makes sense because historic volatility percentile is so fucking low. Bitcoin's been winding up for so long. I mean, usually when Bitcoin winds up for 2 to 3 months, we're looking at a macro play. We're looking at a macro play for 50% moves to the downside and X's to the upside, if you want to call it that. And I really dislike even talking about those sorts of more lofty expectations because it doesn't really happen all that often, but this is one of those times where it's actually historically speaking the right time to be thinking like that. Looking at the 12-hour right here, Bali and Pig's mom moving down, but we should note that the probabilities for the upside is actually significantly larger on this read right here, almost 33% versus 60% for the downside. And if we look at the slopes of these rings here, they are flat. They're flat, yeah. On the 12-hour, the daily is actually a little bit angled to the downside, not so aggressively, but ever so slightly. So fair enough. At the end of the day, it's still pretty much the same thing that we've been looking at for the last 2 months. So did you enjoy masturbating with your HIV-infested needles today with me? I did. I had a really good time. And there's your positive message of the day, my friends. I think I'll leave you off, or let's go over the ranges. You already fucking know them though, because it's the same fucking ranges. Hey, we're looking at the same goddamn ranges, my friends. But looking at this right here, I'm just gonna make this as concise as possible. Yesterday's 12-hour dildo. If we move above it, if you want to be a little more conservative, 9600 is probably fine. But I would look for that continuation divergence to bring us back up to 98, 9900 region, and then if assuming that the 2-day closes above there or even at there, I'd be looking for a break to the upside relatively soon. By the same token, even just a takeout of the last 12-hour dildo below 92.27 on sorry, this is not Mexico, this is GDAX. See what Mexico is printing. 92.19.5. So yeah, they're kind of right next to each other as they should be. And 92.30 spot 3.2 for stamp. Any sort of move back below there that will turn momentum oscillators on the medium and higher term timeframes back onto the downside. I would look for a quick test of 9,000, probably another small anemic bounce there, but overall that'd be looking very, very good for a setup for a break onto the downside, as now we actually would have a downtrend confirmed by that point. So it's kind of like a do or die situation here. I think that we are going to be having resolution relatively soon, and especially considering that Thursday seems to be the day of moving for Bitcoin. Well, time to pay attention, at least as far as I'm concerned. So I would like to wish you well once again, wishing you the best of the best and the happiest of the happiest from a very thundery and kind of scary Helsinki, Finland right now. Take care, and until next time.